So good morning. Nice to see a good number of people today. And I hope you've been enjoying this month of Sakadawa. And we're going to continue our Sunday talks on the three principles of the path. But first of all, as we've done before, we're going to start with a little meditation.
Oh,
So
sorry.
you leave that off, leave the prayer off, first of all. So I love to be able to see people's eyes, whether they're meditating or not. You're cheating, whether you're lying down or whatever. So sit comfortably. Get your spine straight, left and right. Relax your body, relax your mind. Relaxing your mind, in my interpretation at the beginning here, means just remind yourself there's nothing else you have to think about now. This is your time for meditation. And place your mindfulness on the breathing in front. Just pay attention to the breathing, and once you've noticed it, you keep it in mind. Be mindful of it, to the exclusion of everything else. Let go of your propensity to multitask. That is, your mind may be thinking of something else at the same time as watching the breathing. Now bring your attention down to your heart chakra, if you will. Let go of your attention, mindfulness to the breathing, and instead focus on the contents of your mind at first. Notice if there's any predominant emotional state, any concerns that you're still ruminating about, memories of the past, plans for the future, observations or criticisms or whatever of the present, noticing pains in your body or something. Let go of all of the attention to the content of your mental consciousness and just focus instead on the mind itself, within which those concepts, images, memories, thoughts are appearing in. They kind of emerge out of the clear light nature of your mind. They absorb, dissolve back into it when we don't focus on them. if something keeps on nagging you, some thought keeps up appearing in your mind, in the same way that you might turn away from someone who's in your face, you know, someone who's arguing, puts their face next to you, you turn away. Turn your attention away from the objective thought in your mind or appearance to the subjective mind that's perceiving it. The clear light nature of the mind is not something that has a shape or color. It's something that's known by your wisdom. It's not in analogy to objects of sight, so it doesn't have a configuration or a color. It's the mere lack of any obstructing nature of the mind to thoughts arising or disappearing. So thoughts here also includes emotions, anger, attachment, depression. After time, you begin to get a conception of the mind, a thought of the mind, a mental image of the mind, this clear light nature of the mind. Even that at present is a thought. Let go of that and try to perceive the actual clear light nature of the mind within which that is emerging or appearing. If your mind is distracted, scattering, you can pull your chin down a little bit, put your head down, just down a little. If your mind begins to sink, you can bring your head up a little to to normal position. Recognize that this clarity of the mind, this clear light nature, conventional clear light nature, is a great resource that we can come back to when we feel depressed or frustrated or unhappy, to see the potential of the mind. We can let go of faulty states of mind, unhappiness even, because it's always fueled by some kind of thinking. You don't have to be unhappy. And you can develop within this clear light nature of the mind, because it is in no way obstructing. You can develop virtuous thoughts, virtuous states of mind that you've never had before. Like having erased your hard drive on your computer, or even your solid state drive, erased it so that it's zeroed out. starting to re-inhabit the reinserting into your mind the pure, unadulterated software, so to speak, positive thoughts of mind, compassion, renunciation, wisdom of emptiness. The fact that we can observe this right now is due to the fact that we're a human being. We have a life of leisure and endowment. If not all 8 freedoms and 10 richnesses, we have the majority of them. We're not born in hell. We're not a hungry ghost or an animal. The Buddha has arisen in the world. His teachings are still vibrant. There are beings that are practicing it. We have faith in the teachings. Spiritual community to support us. Patrons. This opportunity is very rare, the Buddha taught. Like the chance of a blind turtle coming from the bottom of the ocean to the surface once every 100 years to take a gulp of air for 1 second, then going down to the bottom. And even that doesn't explain having met the Dharma and the teachings. It's like of those 1 seconds that every 100 years the turtle comes up, floating in the oceans of the world, there's a golden yoke, golden ring, representing the appearance of the Dharma in the world, the teachings. The chance of the turtle putting its neck through that ring as it's floating on the ocean could be anywhere else when he comes up. That's how rare it is that we have this life of leisure and endowment. So recognizing that we've spent much of our life in meaningless activities, some of it in sleep, some of it in childhood, completely unknowing of the Dharma. Even when we've learned the Dharma and what we should and shouldn't do in terms of karma, we've fallen prey to our emotions. So to think today, this morning, and the rest of my life, I'm going to use this opportunity to create meaningful activities, to develop the realizations of renunciation, bodhicitta, and the right view of emptiness. It means a wisdom that correctly understands emptiness. When we say right view, to overcome my own suffering, to become happy and content and satisfied and overcome any low self-esteem or depression. But primarily, once we've understood the possibility of that, feeling empathy for all living beings, developing the thought of becoming a better person for their sake. First of all, so that we don't harm them with our angry outbursts or our sticky attachment or our judgment, and wrong advice. But then eventually to be able to help them positively, not just this lifetime, with food and advice and money and support, love, but to lead them into the practice of Dharma, introduce them to the practice of Dharma, which is like the only medicine that can overcome the ills of cyclic existence. To do that, we have to understand the Buddha's teachings, and once understood, put them into practice. I think I'm going to participate this morning, both in terms of theory and practice, to understand the teachings about the three principles of the path, and during the class to put them into practice. I'm going to listen, participate this morning in order to eventually become a Buddha, an enlightened being, to reach my full potential, full actualization for the sake of all sentient beings. Because it's only from that standpoint that we can give real, useful advice from the Dharma point of view. I'm going to listen in order to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. And then bring your attention back to the present. Thank you. Any observations, questions? Someone? Huh? Okay. So, rather than doing formal prayers all the time, sometimes we might alternate. Maybe we can do some prayers also, because it's useful and important to be familiar with the prayers that are said during formal teachings, so that you're not completely pretending to chant along, you know, moving your lips or something like that. That you know the meaning of those verses. But what we try to do in the beginning here with this meditation is to set a motivation that you can get familiar with and remember when you begin to meditate, and to bring that state back. There was one of my monk friends, maybe, I don't know if many of you would know, maybe Shanka would know, Fabrizio. Does anyone know Fabrizio? He was an Italian monk for many years. Now he's a layman. He's a father, but he'd always like to be seen as the monk, by the lamas, as a monk who knew the prayers. You know, even if he didn't know the prayers, he would move his mouth, and then at the end, like many of the verses, like say verses of auspiciousness, the last phrase would be Tashi Shok, which means may there be auspiciousness. And so then he would vocalize that, you know, you go, Tashi Shok, Tashi Shok. Don't be like that, you know, you should be able to know the words of the prayers and so forth. Okay, so Shanka wanted me to mention, and I may mention it again at the end, the importance of study. I think some of the Discovering Buddhism classes may be coming up soon. And so, you know, there's an expression in the Gelugpa tradition, our tradition of Lama Tzong Khapa, that trying to meditate, trying to practice without having studied, without having knowledge of what the Buddha taught, is like a person trying to climb a mountain, like you know, Tom Cruise in one of those movies when he's, you know, there's so many movies where people are climbing, what is it called, free scale, or what is it called, freestyle or something, without arms, trying to climb a mountain without arms. Very difficult, you know. Maybe you're lucky you find some place you can walk with your legs a little while, but then where you have to grasp, you have no arms. So trying to practice the path without knowing the teachings without having studied that's kind of the analogy that's being given. Some of the great Tibetan lamas of the past, and of course the Indian masters before that, they said, Sakya Pandita, the famous founder of the Sakya tradition, said that every day you should study, even till the day that you're going to die, maybe on your deathbed, a little bit of studying new, because study also leaves imprints in your mind to be able to delve into those subjects in more depth in the future, even subjects that seem quite difficult now. If we talk about the fine points of emptiness and karma and different subjects, leaving an imprint in your mind now will bring about great benefits in the future. So if you have a chance to take part in the Discovering Buddhism, or if you have friends who are a little bit interested in Buddhism, suggest to them. Maybe you could join, the first class, even if it's not one you're going to do, just so your friend sees you there, so they come, remind them of the importance of that. So I wanted to give a plug for that. And perhaps at the end, Shanka will mention if there's some schedule of Discovering Buddhism that's coming up, you can enhance your understanding. And if there are any of you that are more advanced students, there might be a couple, and Shanka certainly, I think, we're going to begin some of the basic program, continue with the basic program in July on Buddhist psychology. What's called Lorig, means the ways of knowing, or awareness and knowing, and then followed by the description of, explanation and detail of the 51 mental factors. Did you know there were 51 mental factors? Does anyone know? You can shake your head. David, you didn't know there were 51 mental factors. I sometimes would ask people in class, how many mental factors were there? And most people would say 52, because they're thinking of the number of weeks in the year, it's a number. 50, there must be 52. There's one less than that, 51 mental factors. So, okay, so that aside, we've been talking about the three principles of the path, or three principal aspects of the path, however you like to translate it, which means three essential realizations that are necessary to achieve liberation from cyclic existence, to achieve nirvana, and further, that are necessary to achieve Buddhahood and enlightenment, to become a real, as my Jewish friends say, a real mensch. Do you know what a mensch is? People in New York, always, because there's a lot of a lot of Jewish people, and they all know that word. Does anyone not know what mensch means? Can you put up your hand? You don't know what a mensch is? Oh, okay, a couple of people. So mensch, I think, is kind of Yiddish for man, but man in the full extent, human, a real human. As you say, he's a mensch, or I don't know if there's a separate word for feminine, maybe you'd also say mensch, means like someone who's really noble, reliable, compassionate, empathetic, wise, like has developed the good qualities. So I like to think of that also. We would like to be able to become a real mensch, if you want. So the three principles of the path are the essential ingredients to doing that, to be able to reach our full potential. So we've talked a bit, first of all, a couple of verses that the author was promising to compose the text, and the exhortation, or whatever you would like to say, the urging to listen to the teachings, because this is important, pay attention. Just like if you're talking to your kids and their mind is scattering, you say, listen, this is important, a little bit like that. And we talked about verse 3, Without the wish for freedom, there's no way to calm the pursuit of pleasant effects in the sea of worldly existence, talking about introducing the importance of developing renunciation, the wish to free ourselves from cyclic existence, understanding that what we're immersed in right now is really unsatisfactory, that we could be free, like from a prison. If a person is in prison and they don't realize there's anything outside, they don't have any wish to escape from that. Or, yeah, we talked about the fourth verse. Where is the fourth verse here? Sorry, I should have had it yellowed in so when I'm paging through it, I can see the verse. Well, I go just to the end where it has all of the verses written out. So the fourth one was, freedom and riches are hard to find. That was a verse about talking, first of all, introducing recognition that we have the opportunity now that we may not recognize. Like someone who is down on their luck, they're a street person, they're going through the garbage to find bottles to return. Do you ever see that in Santa Fe or wherever you are? How about in England, in Liverpool, Anna? Do you see something? People are getting the aluminum cans to recycle. They get a couple of cents or something like that, and they come across something covered in dirt, and they're cleaning it off, and they recognize that it's a jewel, maybe some jewelry or some precious stone or something like that. And to recognize until they've been introduced to the fact that this is valuable, they may just throw it away. So to recognize, first of all, what a gem we have right now, a life of leisure and endowment, what we can do with it. Freedom and riches are hard to find. Life is fleeting. We talked about the meditations on impermanence. That's an important element in developing all of the stages of the path, but particularly here with regard to utilizing this life, this opportunity that we have to recognize how it's diminishing with every second. I don't know if anyone in the course of the couple of weeks we've been talking about this has noticed in your jar of sugar, you thought it was full, and then you realize, you look inside and now you're getting to the bottom. It just, with every spoonful, it's diminishing, getting lower and lower. Familiarity with this, with life, the rarity and the meaningfulness of a life of leisure and endowment, and the fact that it's changing in the shortest instant. Familiarity with this stops clinging to this life's pleasures. The compulsive interest in and cultivation of the pleasures of the moment. Sometimes you get so upset because you didn't get some pleasure, or you miss the sale or at some store or something like this, or the familiarity with this stops the clinging to this life's pleasures. Repeatedly considering actions, their unfailing effects, as well as the suffering of cyclic existence, stops clinging to future pleasures. So this is what we were last time. So all of our suffering, that everything that we feel now that's uncomfortable, has come about because of actions that we've created in the past. We say karma. And those actions that we've created have left some presence in our mind stream. We say the seeds of karma, the karmic seeds. Karma and their seeds are different. When we create an action, that's called karma. It leaves a deformation in our consciousness. That's likened to a seed, because seeds have the potential to give rise to sprouts in the future. If you have poisonous seeds, they'll give rise to unpleasant effects, unpleasant sprouts, poisonous, belladonna or something like that, or thorny plants and so forth. Actually, belladonna can be used for medicine, right? Any of you are, if you plant seeds of medicinal herbs and peach trees and apple trees and arugula, maybe you don't like arugula, I like arugula, or nice greens. I understand a lot of people don't like kale. You might not think that's good, but if you plant things, they will bring those results. So understanding that all of the experiences that we have, there is no way to experience them other than having created the karma in the past. So when you have unfortunate things happening to you, suffering, rather than dwelling on how sad you are, to recognize the cause of that was our own activities, and to use that as a wake-up call to clean up your acts. If you don't want to be criticized, that you're hearing now, realize you've created the karma for that in the past. There's that kind of habit energy to do that again in the future. So try to overcome that tendency to criticize others, or to steal, or to lie, because those things will come back to you. So understanding these first points helps to stop clinging to life's pleasures, repeatedly considering actions, their unfailing effects, results, as well as the suffering of cyclic existence, stops clinging to future pleasures. So you might think, what I'm doing now, I'm trying to set up a situation where the rest of this life and future lives will be kind of like just skating, no problems. I'll have wealth, I'll have friends, I won't be criticized, I won't be stolen from, and so forth. But recognizing wherever we're born in cyclic existence, it's the nature of suffering. So one way to do that, and I didn't mention this before, is to have heard and think about the Buddha's exposition on the various kinds of suffering. So you may be familiar with what we talked about: suffering of suffering, changeable suffering, and pervasive compounded suffering, right? We talked about that before. Yeah. Susie, did you remember?
I'm not sure whether it was another class with you, but I have learned that with you, definitely.
Okay, good.
But so it might have been at a different place.
Sometimes that's considered a little bit more sophisticated. So sometimes the Buddha oftentimes he talked about the 8 sufferings. Anyone here? Victor, do you know the 8 sufferings? Okay, good. That's honest. I'm glad. Nadine, do you know the 8 sufferings?
I knew them, but it's difficult to tell them.
Oh, okay. That's always important, especially.
Is it specific for humans or general for entire samsara?
I think general samsara.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know.
Leah, do you know the 8 sufferings?
No, sir, I don't know them.
You don't have to say sir. You can say George. Where are you, Leah? Are you in Santa Fe?
I'm in Santa Fe, yes.
Yeah, okay. So rather than quizzing other people, anyone know the 8 sufferings?
Are they the same as the 8 worldly dharmas? Is that what you're talking about?
No.
Oh, okay.
No. Oh, you don't know the 8? Oh my gosh. Okay. So the Buddha taught, Nancy, you were going to say?
Well, I just remember sickness and death and birth.
Okay,
I don't know
That's a start. Okay. So the Buddha, before talking about this more sophisticated understanding of the three types of suffering, suffering of suffering, changeable suffering, compounded suffering, he taught the 8 sufferings. So birth is suffering. Western conception is being in the womb is like the time we all want to go back to, right? We talk about as though that was some pleasurable time before the world exposed us to all of the deceit and suffering and so forth. But from a Buddhist perspective, being in the womb, if you were to have clairvoyance to know the mind of a baby in the womb, it is said that they experience an incredible physical suffering of being tossed around, odors that seep through from mom's womb, of excrement and different kinds of, if mother eats something that's too spicy or unpleasant, the baby also suffers because of that. Being enclosed in a place with these odors is sometimes likened. One of my Tibetan teachers, Geshe Darge, said it was like being locked in an Indian train toilet, because we were in India at the time, all the way from Pathankot to Delhi, or all the way down to South India, never being able to get out. Bad smells, tossed around, no freedom to get out, and so forth. So birth, there is suffering of birth, although Western point, we never really think about that. So it's not something to look forward to be born again. There'll be suffering there. There's the suffering of, well, let me mention the first 4 and explain why I give this order. Usually birth, aging, sickness, and death. These are the first 4 of the 8. Birth, aging, sickness, and death. Some people might say, well, you've given the wrong order. It should be birth, sickness, aging, and death, right? You think you're born and then you get sick and then you age when you get older. From a Buddhist perspective, you are aging the very second moment after you are conceived. You're born, or if you talk about birth from the point of conception, or if you talk about birth from the point of leaving mom's womb, when you come out, you're slapped by the nurse or doctor and you start crying. You are aging from that moment. Although we usually associate aging with like what I'm experiencing. I've got, what is it called? Can't remember. Ventophilia macular dystrophy. My eyes are starting to go out. I was just I just had an MRI for my prostate. I might have to have some operation. It's like Lama Yeshe used to say, when I noticed some little glaze in his eyes, he said, oh yes, the Lord of Death is starting to take his equipment back as you get older. My friends refer to this kind of, when we talk to one another, is talking about organ recital. Usually if you go to church or the symphony hall, there's an organ recital, but organ recital meaning, oh, my kidney, my gallbladder, my prostate or whatever. So aging actually takes place from the very first moment you begin to age. It's not only those signs, near-death signs. Sickness, we all experience suffering of sickness. Well, so we all experience birth, entry into a new environment, often with suffering, especially from the womb. We all experience aging from the change of that's so subtle at the beginning, we don't notice it, and much more intense at nearing, getting older. And we all experience sickness, illness of different kinds. Is there anyone here who's never had a headache? Come on, fess up. Let me see. There's some people who saving bandwidth. I'm even going to call on them. Bobby Falls, have you ever had a headache? Okay, maybe Bobby's off making tea. I don't know. Anne Coughlin, Colin, have you
I've
ever
had
had
many headaches.
Okay, good. Okay, so is there any, illness, is there anyone who goes through life without any illness? Well, maybe there's some people who have better genes and they have, they die before any of these other things come up. But we all have had colds, fevers, headaches, illness of various kinds, and some quite severe, so birth, aging, sickness, illness, and death. Why is death suffering? Is death suffering necessarily? If you are dying because of a bullet wound, you were shot by Dirty Harry, or or you're beaten, or you die in a crash, maybe that's obvious suffering from an injury. But people who die in their bed, you may not think that's suffering, but near the time of death, there is said to be the greatest kinds of sufferings: fear of losing this life, grasping on. People that are, some people that haven't been familiar with impermanence earlier in their life, near the time of death, if they're in the hospice, it's almost, you have to explain to them that this is inevitable and it's going to happen. What's really important now at our point is to get familiar with the inevitability of death, so that it won't be so mentally suffering at that time. That suffering at the time of death, that fear of losing this life, is what impels us into a future life. When we talk about the 12 links of dependent origination, we talk about craving, grasping, becoming at the time of death. The craving, the grasping to life is what causes the karmic seeds in our mind stream to be reborn in the future, causes them to sprout up and to bring about the transition to the next lifetime, to be go into the intermediate state and to find another life. So birth, aging, sickness, and death are the first 4 of the 8 sufferings. That's, I think, what Nancy, was it Nancy, you were thinking of those, right? What are the last 4? Now that we said those 4, anyone know? Maybe you've only heard those 4. Claire, are you an older student? No? Okay. So we talk about meeting with that which is unpleasant. Everyone experiences that, right? What kind of things are unpleasant? Well, hot day, headache, criticism, pain. All of these things are unpleasant. Are there any people here who don't experience anything unpleasant in your lives? What do I say? Ada, is there anything, what would you say, Ada, is something unpleasant that you experience?
Hot weather, very, very hot weather, like in California.
Right, weather, danger of fire, fire, there's a fire in your house, you burn the eggs, there's disappointment, and so forth. All of us, our suffering is not continuous in the sense of, intense suffering all our lives, most of us, but there are episodes, and those episodes are brought about because of encountering that which is unpleasant. And that can be that, when the word that can mean many different things. It can mean, headaches, or it can mean just an unpleasant person, the person who argues with you or criticizes you or whatever. Unpleasant sights, bad smells. You walk down the street and we're out in the countryside here, there's roadkill sometimes, and there's a rotting flesh and so forth. Encountering that which is unpleasant. Another kind of universal suffering is separating from that which is pleasant. Separating from friendships. You had an argument, incredible heartache. Separating from loved ones as they die and pass away. Oftentimes, when people have passed away, there's lamentation and, screaming and so forth, and feelings, great sadness. Generally, what we're doing is we're feeling sorry for ourselves when someone else has passed away, some loved one has passed away. Or if there's some loved celebrity, when Elvis died or something like that, if your favorite show has been canceled. But in our own intimate way, there are many things that we feel suffering about when we're separated from that which we have had, we have some connection with, either friendship or possessions. Your hard-earned money has been, you owe it to the government in taxes or something like that. Or what was it, Ammon Bundy? Is that the guy out in Oregon right now? Thinking that the water was his. You know what I'm talking about? No one follows the news here? No? Leah, you don't know what I'm talking about? Shanka, you follow the news, don't you? You know Ammon Bundy?
Yeah, I remember him from a couple of years ago. It's the guy who's fighting the federal government.
Right.
He's got armed bunch of guys with him or something like that, right?
Right.
About land and land use or something. Yeah.
Right. Right now they're claiming the government is cutting off their water to irrigate their fields, which are government land or something like this. Anyway, being separated from that which you found attractive. You had access to this water, now it's cut off. So meeting with that which is unpleasant, separating from what is pleasant. Third one, never finding what you want.
Yeah.
Oh, I heard someone saying, yeah. Is that you, Leah?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know. I just know people that had so much suffering for that. Some of my parents, they never found what they were never happy and found what they were looking for.
Right. We can think of immense examples of that, people that never were able to be successful in a job or to find the happiness of their relationship or to find status in the world, never finding love, as an adult. Maybe even if we may not have been loved as a child in some cases, generally we were loved to some extent, but never to find that special person, never to be loved. You can see by the number of the percentage of people that end up in divorce in marriage, how many people never found some kind of lasting relationship like that. The hungry ghosts, the pretas, one of their main sufferings is never finding, let's say, water for hundreds, thousands of years. Their lifespan might be 100,000 Earth years, human years, 200,000 years. So it's like, not. Can you imagine? They still, their karma is such that they still continue to live, but they feel the suffering of that, physical suffering of thirst and hunger, never finding food, but also the mental anguish of that. So I sometimes think of individuals who are going to the singles bars, you know, walking the streets, almost like walking the streets at night, like the hungry ghosts, never finding what they want. Maybe finding some short gratification, but that's never satisfying. So the Buddha broke down that way. These 3 of the 4 final sufferings: encountering what's unpleasant, separating from what's attractive, never finding what you want, whether it be career or success or love or fame or wealth or whatever. And then the 4th of these, the second set of 4 that makes the total of 8, is the three kinds of suffering we talked about before. That is suffering of suffering, changeable suffering, and pervasive suffering. So that essentially this last one, the most pernicious, the most extensive, is the all-pervasive compounded suffering. Just having a body and mind under the influence of karma and delusion is suffering. It's susceptible in the shortest instant to give rise to other kinds of suffering. So this is what when the Buddha talked about the 8 sufferings, when you read these verses and you think about renunciation, go through these sometimes. When I did a long retreat, there was some visualization of deity. There's a 8-petaled lotus that the deity is, you know, residing on, right? You've heard, you know, you talk about 8-petaled lotus. Sometimes in Tantra, we talk about the 8 petals at the heart chakra. So when I would visualize those, I would also meditate on the 8 sufferings, the 4 cardinal directions, or the, you know, birth, aging, sickness, and death. So if you do that, if you meditate, you know, on a deity that's sitting on 8-petaled lotus, and then in the intermediate directions, encountering that which is unpleasant, separating from that which is pleasant, never finding what you want, and then the 3 basic kinds of sufferings: suffering of suffering, changeable suffering, all compounded, pervasive suffering. So those are called the 8 sufferings. Those of you, you know, we don't give an exam on Sunday classes. This is just sort of general introduction to Buddhism, our Sunday go to meeting time. But if I were to give an exam, I would ask David, what are the 8 sufferings? And he'd better know next time. Okay, so those are 8 sufferings. How about the 6 sufferings? You might say, well, the first 6 of those 8. No, that's not it. Anyone know the 6 sufferings? Doris, you've heard a lot of things. Have you heard 6 sufferings?
I probably know them in the sense that I experienced them.
Okay,
But I don't know.
That's a good
don't
way
know
to
the-
get out. That's excellent evasion. Okay, James, do you know the 6 sufferings? No. Okay, good honesty. So the 6 sufferings are mainly with regard to upper rebirths, although they are also shared with the lower rebirths. So the 8 sufferings that someone asks, are they mainly human or whatever? 8 sufferings are for all sentient beings. 6 sufferings mainly for upper births. Shankar, do you know the 6 sufferings?
Well, it's you still have birth, death.
Okay, that's kind of clever. Yeah, that's yeah.
Well, I'm thinking of the upper, the upper realms. I mean, like, so if you're formless, then you don't have aging, probably. You don't have.
Well, yeah. If say in the desire realm, the gods don't age much during most of their life, but the last few days of their life, or the last period of their life, incredible aging. Their garlands begin to smell, and their body emits odor, and they no longer have the glow and so forth. But here, the 6 sufferings are first the suffering of uncertainty. That means uncertainty of relationships. Say, for instance, we think friends are, they're my friend. Oh, that's my lifelong friend. But friendship is uncertain. Our status in life of being high or low is uncertain. There's a famous example the Buddha gave. Or I'm not sure. I think it must have been the Buddha who said, but he was talking, I think Shariputra was going on for alms. Oh, no, maybe Moggallana, the one who had psychic powers. So Moggallana was going for alms. He came to a house and he looked, the people didn't come out, and he looked through the window. It wasn't peeping Tom, he was just checking what was happening. And he saw in the house, a wife, the wife of the family was cooking a fish in a frying pan. You know this story? Doris, you know this one? Charlene, no? The wife was cooking a fish in the frying pan. The husband was sitting down in a chair at the breakfast table or dinner table, whatever it was, holding their baby, cuddling that, loving that, and kicking away the dog that was nipping at his feet. And so Moggallana, with his psychic powers, looked into their minds and to their past lives and saw that the fish in the frying pan had been the father of the lady who was cooking him, who had just died. She was his daughter. The baby that was being cuddled by the father had been the suitor to his wife before they got married. He was his somewhat hated suitor, adversary for his wife's affections. He was now cuddling. And the dog had been the mother of the lady. She had, out of great attachment to the household, she had been born in the lower realms as a dog that was born there on that property. The father had died and was born as a fish in the pond that had been, they caught and they were having for breakfast or dinner, lunch, whatever. So Shariputra or Moggallana said, how strange samsara, eating father, kicking mother, embracing your enemy, how uncertain cyclic existence is. Those people that we think of as enemies, hated people right now, in the next lifetime, they may become our intimate companions, our brothers and sisters, our parents, or whatever. Those that we love in the future may become our enemies. In fact, they have been our enemies numberless times in the past, our present friends. All of these relationships that we think of as so enduring are actually uncertain. There's no certainty or definite, a definite friend, definite enemy. Okay, makes sense? Suffering of uncertainty. Then the suffering of lack of satisfaction. I say that's something that is found even in the upper realms where there's so many pleasures. All of the things that we experience as pleasure never really satiate us. You know what I mean by satiate? Like if you're thirsty, you drink salted water. For an instant, that some dryness in your mouth is gone, but the thirst has been, is never leaves because of that, because of drinking the water that has some salt, some saline in it. when we talked about a changeable suffering on a couple of occasions, I mentioned there's no real happiness. It's always exchanging one suffering nature for another, you know. So when we say there's no satisfaction, not in the sense of Mick Jagger. Some of you are the same. Remember the song, I Can't Get No Satisfaction? I remember once when I was in college, I went to a mixer. You know what a mixer is? You know, when the dance, you know, from your younger days, at what was Harvard? It was Radcliffe, you know, the girls' college at Harvard. I don't know if it's separate now from Harvard, but it's the girls' school. And there, I remember dancing with one girl while Mick Jagger's I Can't Get No Satisfaction was playing. And then that Sunday in the New York Times, there was a photo of this girl dancing. And I thought the guy's back was turned. And I asked them to send, I wrote a letter to the New York Times asking to send that photo to me because I was the guy in the photo. Turns out I wasn't the guy that had danced with her some other point in that mixer. But I remember that song, I Can't Get No Satisfaction. So here the satisfaction is talking about something else. You can find some temporary satisfaction, you know. Like Mick probably found a lot of satisfaction as cocaine or girlfriends or whatever, but it never satiates you so that you never need it again, that input. That's one of the basic sufferings of the upper realms. Uncertainty, you know, even you're born as a god in the next lifetime. Well, no, uncertainty is talking about relationships generally. There's no certainty of relationships. There is no satiation. You never get to the point where you've had enough and you'll never need it again. That's a basic suffering of the upper realms. Then, as Shanka had astutely noticed, the suffering of leaving the body again and again. You could call it death when you talk about the 8 sufferings. Here is the terminology is leaving the body again and again, leaving the life again and again. Whatever life we have, you always will have to leave it. You've become, you know, comfortable in this life. You're familiar with it, and there's always terror and sadness and leaving this lifetime. So that's one of the basic sufferings also, and then the suffering of taking rebirth again and again. Remember when we talked about the 8 sufferings, there was the suffering of birth, aging, sickness, and death. So here, you might say this is similar to birth, the suffering of taking rebirth again and again. Actually, of these 6 sufferings, this is considered to be the paramount one, the most severe suffering, because if you didn't take rebirth, there would be no more experience of suffering and cyclic existence, you know, life after death, life after life. So from some, analysis of this, taking rebirth, especially from the point of Tantra, that's said to be the root of cyclic existence. Did you know that, Shanka? We talk about that's why one tries to transform impure death, intermediate state, and rebirth into the 3 bodies of the Buddha. So anyway, those of you who have heard that before might make a connection there. So uncertainty, lack of satisfaction or satiety, leaving the body again and again, taking rebirth again and again. And then the last 2 of the 6, rising and falling is one of them. Rising and falling. Famous expression in the Buddhist teachings, and I'm sure all religions have something similar. What do we say in the West? Whatever goes up must come down, right? whatever wealth is accumulated, whatever is accumulated eventually has to be dispersed. You know, there's an expression like this. It also includes some of the others. When whoever is born will eventually have to die, and so forth. So rising and falling refers to, you can look in the political realm. You reach some status, some strata of authority and power. Eventually, you'll have to relinquish that. You will fall. The example I always think of is Richard Nixon. When I was a kid, and, you know, from president of the United States to, you know, being resigning and leaving and ending up with all sorts of psychosomatic illnesses. What did he have? Phlebitis in his leg and other things. Can you imagine the suffering, the mental anguish it must be of losing that position, of falling once he had been to that high position? Yeah, so you can imagine in your own lifetime. What we see now, the reporters that had written stories that won the Pulitzer Prize, and then someone finds that they had lied about some of their sources or so forth, you know, in the news, falling from that status and so forth. And then the final of the 6 sufferings, what do we say? Uncertainty, lack of satisfaction, giving up the body again and again, taking rebirth again and again, rising and falling. 6th one, never having a friend. And you might say, oh, come on, hold on, I've got friends. Do you have a friend who will accompany you to the next lifetime? Probably not. There are some stories in the Jataka tales where the Buddha talked about various people who he encountered again and again in other lifetimes, but they weren't necessarily always encountered as friends. You know, in one lifetime, they were like the story at the beginning of Mogaliana looking through the window, seeing the wife cooking the fish. The loved one, you know, becomes, you know, food for you. You know, you eat them or something like that. Here we say never having a friend means at the time of death, you can't take anything with you, and your friends of this lifetime won't accompany you on that journey through the intermediate state into the next lifetime. So although, and even in the lifetime, there are rare, as you get older, there are rare people that you've had friendships all during your life. There might be some. Does anyone have someone they went to kindergarten with that was your friend then and still your friend? Oh, really? Nancy, have you? You do? Okay, yeah, I have my friend Mac, Dennis McClure, Mac for McClure. We went to kindergarten, grade school, high school. We were friends through college. I went to MIT, went to Yale, so we spent a lot of time visiting, and still my friend. But many people, you know, even during lifetime, we lose. So the suffering of never having a friend means someone who's continuously your friend throughout, that you can share all of these different rebirths with, doesn't happen. Those are called the 6 sufferings. Have you heard that before? Anna, have you heard that before? No. Have you studied the Lan Rim?
Hello, Venerable.
Yes.
A while ago, but no, I don't even remember having an inkling of remembering about the 6 sufferings.
So these come from the Buddhist sutras, and they are found in the stages of the path, the Lan Rim, We talk about the 8 sufferings, the 6 sufferings, and then we talked about the 3 sufferings. Some of them overlap, as we see. There's a prayer that a verse that I say from the Foundation of Good Qualities. Some of you are familiar with that prayer. It's a kind of a glance meditation on the Lan Rim. It was written by Lama Tzong Khapa. Do you know that prayer, Shanka? Foundation of Good Qualities? So there's one verse that says, Chepe mingom dugnel kungi go, iten mirum sipe punsoki, nemek rikne tarpe dewala, donya chempo kepar jingilo. So it means, chepe mingom, enjoying the pleasures of cyclic existence. Chepa is from the word longcho when we talk about the enjoyment body of the Buddha. Chopa, and one of the tenses cheba. Che means to enjoy. To enjoy, in enjoyment, there's no satisfaction. So that's one of the 6, right? That's the second of the 6. There was uncertainty, no satisfaction. Chepe mingom, dugnel kungi go. Dugnel kungi go means enjoying the pleasures of cyclic existence is the doorway to all suffering. It perpetuates, falling in love again. It will, like I told you before, there was one, what was it? Not Alanis Morissette, there's some famous European singer. We're never going to fall in love again, you fall in love again, and there may be some rocky or whatever, but it's always the doorway. Entering into new things with enthusiasm is the doorway to perpetuate samsara. And so this is referring to the, the 4th one, taking rebirth again and again. Like I said, that's the most pernicious of all of the 6 sufferings. Chepe mingom dugnel kungigo yiten mirum. All of the samsaric pleasures are unreliable. So that refers to the other 4 of the 6 sufferings. Uncertainty, relationships are unreliable. Lifespan is unreliable. Rising and falling, your status in cyclic existence is unreliable, and friendship is unreliable. So that verse in the Yondan Shigurma is talking about these 6 sufferings in what the Buddha even said, you can condense the 6 into these 3 things, that all the pleasures in cyclic existence don't bring satisfaction. Engaging in them wholeheartedly is the doorway to infinite suffering, all suffering. And samsaric pleasures are unreliable. You can't, you eat your favorite food when you're depressed. It doesn't necessarily take away your depression. Have you ever experienced that? You go to your favorite restaurant and it just didn't meet your expectations. They're not, samsaric pleasures are not reliable. So I just wanted to mention that, those different kinds of meditations on suffering, because it says here, repeatedly considering actions, in verse 4, repeatedly considering actions, their unfailing results, effects, as well as the suffering nature of cyclic existence, stops clinging to future pleasures. So in order to develop real renunciation, it's not a renunciation of just the present suffering. It's the renunciation of taking rebirth anywhere in cyclic existence, understanding that wherever you're born, it will be of the nature of suffering. So the 5th verse is, when through such familiarity, meditating on the suffering nature of cyclic existence and so forth, when through such familiarity, not even a moment's longing arises for the marvels of cyclic existence. Sometimes Lama Yeshe called it the perfection, samsaric perfections. What are the samsaric perfections? Some people say there's no word perfection, but punso, you could say perfections, but it means like the marvels of cyclic existence: wealth, beauty, fame, power, all of the things that we think of the best of cyclic existence. When through such familiarity, not even a moment's longing arises for this marvels of cyclic existence, and if day and night you constantly aspire to free yourself from cyclic existence, aspire for freedom, you have developed the wish to leave cyclic existence. So this verse is talking about the demarcation or the certification that you've developed renunciation, spontaneous renunciation. You don't have to think about it. You're tempted to do something and then you have to think about it and say, well, I don't want to take that money because it's it has been gained by illegal means. You have to think about it. When your mind has become so absorbed all of this understanding of the cyclic nature of cyclic existence, you don't aspire to any of these things. That's a sign of having developed renunciation. I might have mentioned to you in one of our other classes that one of the present throne holder of the Gelugpa tradition, we say the Ganden Tipa. T means throne. Tipa means the throne holder. Ganden is the monastery, the name of the monastery that Lama Tzong Khapa founded, and sort of called, the Gelugpa tradition was called the Ganden tradition at one time. So the Ganden Tipa is a throne holder of the Lama Tzong Khapa's tradition. Up until the present, there's always one individual who is appointed to that to look after the Gelugpa tradition. The present Ganden Tipa is one of my teachers. He was the teacher of one of the disciples of Geshe Zopa, who was my teacher. So he would come to Deer Park sometime to teach in the summer. And I remember very vividly one time when they brought him to this room they prepared for him, the flowers, and they sprayed, some nice scents in the air, and there was fruit, big bowl of fruit, a comfortable chair and bed and everything. Everything's clean. And there's a thing, what do you think, Rinpoche? What do you think of, isn't this nice? And he says, it's anywhere in samsara is suffering. This is not, it's not, it wasn't, it was teaching even at that moment in just casual conversation, all of this is in the nature of suffering. This is nothing to get excited about, the marvels of cyclic existence. No aspiration. He would have been happy in a much, simpler room without all of these things. Generally, we talk about this word. What do we say here? If day and night you constantly aspire to freedom, you have developed the wish to leave cyclic existence. So we call that kind of state of mind spontaneous renunciation. Means it doesn't have to be brought up with effort. In our meditation, we sometimes try to develop a motivation of bodhicitta. I'm going to listen to the teachings in order to achieve enlightenment for the sake of sentient beings. That's called contrived bodhicitta. Not in the sense like it's not real bodhicitta. It's bodhicitta, but it has come about because of effort, effortful bodhicitta. You have to use effort to think about it and then develop that mind. When bodhicitta arises day and night, the thought to achieve enlightenment for the sake of sentient beings without effort, all the time that's on your mind, that's called spontaneous bodhicitta. So here we're just talking about spontaneous renunciation. Most of us, certainly me, I don't know you may all be Buddhas who are appearing on my screen here I may be the last sentient being in cyclic existence, and all of you are Buddhas emanating, pretending that I'm giving me the opportunity to talk about the Dharma, being patient with me, cultivating me. So this is the opportunity that I have. So I don't know, maybe you all have spontaneous renunciation and bodhicitta and wisdom of emptiness. I don't know. So that's verse 5. And next time we're going to start talking about this finishes the section on renunciation. We talked about the need to develop the thought, how to develop the thought, and kind of in this verse, the measure of having developed bodhicitta when it arises, renunciation, when it arises day and night without effort, when you have that wish to free, you see everything is not enticing. You enjoy things as medicine, in order to continue living, to develop the wisdom and the methods to escape from cyclic existence. That's called spontaneous renunciation. So let me ask if there are any questions or clarifications or corrections that you'd like to make. Any questions that you have? Even the people whose photos are not up on the page, there's some icon you can put this like a hand. Like, I have a question that I can call on you. Anyone? Claire, do you have any question? Oh, okay. Susie has a question or a comment.
Thank you, Venerable. I'm not quite sure if I'm going to be able to word this, but I'll have a go.
Okay.
How do you hold yourself steady when you learn this about renunciation? Because it feels incredibly inspiring, and also like everything's just tipped upside down. I feel sort of shaky in it and scared, but also huge and excited. And it's just because it's like everything that I've learned to be a certain way is bull,
Right.
And I can imagine down the line being so like, yeah, I remember being hooked into that, but I'm cool now. But I'm still hooked in, I'm
Right.
still hooked into needing things and believing certain crap about stuff. And I so want to unhook, but then there's a part of me that's attached to being hooked. I mean, I'm not articulating.
Right. No, I have an idea of what you're saying. So we have to be patient with ourselves. This state of mind of renunciation, ordinary people in the world, let's say even in let's say the Judaic Christian or the peoples of the book, when you include Islam, all of them have traditions of renunciates, right? But oftentimes people, the laity, look at them as either crazy, living in the desert fathers, or the, nuns, or Sufis or whatever. Either they think they're crazy, or if they have an aspiration to that, they feel, oh, they're saints. Only they can do that. I can't do that. Right? So we have to recognize we're still probably in that spectrum. We have moments when we think that might be super extreme, or moments when we say, oh, to be like the Gandantipa who just saw, nothing in the room was like, it's all samsara. We might admire that, but think that's difficult to develop. But go back to the clear light nature of your mind. Recognize that all of these insights into the nature of cyclic existence, that suffering nature, can be developed through familiarity, listening to the words of the Buddha, thinking about them, seeing examples in your everyday life. So having talked about these 8 sufferings, 6 sufferings, 3 sufferings, see if in this coming week, read about them, think about them again, review your notes, and then see if there are examples that you can see of that in your lifetime. Lack of satisfaction, you've had something before, but you want it again. because of the basic kind of attachment that is the, sinks into objects and it finds it very difficult to extricate from them. That attachment comes from ego grasping. So if we want to escape from cyclic existence, we have to engage in what are called the 3 higher trainings. Training in ethics, morality, the training in concentration, and the training in wisdom. Just wisdom alone is not enough. If you have wisdom, but your mind is not concentrated, it's like looking at a classic example, looking at murals at night on the walls of an old temple. You've got some candle that's flickering, and you can kind of see the Buddha for an instant when the flame is in the right position, and then it shifts. So without concentration, even if we have wisdom, we can't really hold it for some period of time to overcome our ego grasping, to overcome our attachment, and then we can see things as they are. The basis for all of them is ethics, not engaging in negative activities, even if you haven't taken vows, to avoid the 10, what we call the 10 paths of negative actions, that sometimes people call the 10 non-virtuous actions, right? Killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, abuse, divisive speech, and idle gossip. And what are the last 3? 3 of mind: covetousness, malice, and wrong view. So, practicing morality acts as a foundation to have concentration, because your mind is not worried about things. Having concentration is a basis for wisdom. Wisdom is what we need to develop in order to see all of these, in order to, once we've developed a superficial renunciation, understanding of it, wisdom is what can bring that to cultivation, culmination. Someone else have a thought or question?
I have a question. So the Shanti Deva's verse, accumulation ends in dispersal, rising ends in falling, meeting ends in parting, and birth ends in death, right? So is it accurate to say those 4 are essentially like, there's about the 6 sufferings you talked about, there's 2 of them that aren't covered in there. Is that correct? Like lack of satisfaction and leaving the body again and again.
Well, just in terms of that verse, that's what I was trying to recall earlier when I said rising and falling. All things that are acquired, if you acquire wealth, eventually it has to be dispersed. If not during this lifetime, at the time of death, you don't have it. Whatever goes up will fall. What were the other 2 you said? Meetings end in separation, right? Whatever, friends you meet, eventually you have to separate in this lifetime, or at least at the time of death. And what was the last one?
Birth ends in death.
Birth ends in death. Yeah, I think I'd mentioned, if not all of them, at least 3 of them. That's the suffering that we call rising and falling. Okay.
Okay.
And just to reiterate what I mentioned at the beginning at Shanka's request, discovering Buddhism, I assume some courses are going to be starting soon. Shanka, is that right?
Well, discovering Buddhism is going on. Karuna is teaching it. And Karuna is Venerable George knows him very well, but he's a very old, he's one of the senior students of Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa. And so he's teaching on how to meditate. And then, I can't remember but so that's going on right now. So that'll end in sometime late July. Or June.
So I'll just say again, as I said at the beginning, the importance, at least to our, Buddhist point of view, of understanding the teachings. So if you have friends or you yourself want to enhance your understanding, like not to be like the armless rock climber, but to have the ability to navigate the world, you need to know the teachings and then to meditate. You know, there's some traditions that say, oh, all these words is just concepts. Meditation, no concepts, no mind. You know, from a Buddhist perspective, that is missing the point. You can't really, meditating on emptiness doesn't mean emptying your mind, right? Did you know that? It doesn't mean like having no thoughts. There is a time to have no thoughts. You know, you're just concentrating on one thing. Say, for instance, when you meditate on the Lan Rim, first of all, you want to calm your mind like we do at the beginning, having no other extraneous thoughts. Then within that, it's like a laboratory table that you're going to do the great experiments on, developing love and compassion and renunciation and wisdom. You need to have a clear tabletop, you know, not all sort of dust and dirt and coffee pots sitting there. You want to have a clean desktop. Then within that laboratory of your mind, you use thinking. And in order to use thinking and logic and so forth, you need to have heard the teachings, begun to think about them outside of meditation. Then in formal meditation, you analyze them again and again. Is it really that everything is rising and falling? Do I have to leave life, you know, and so forth? Then when you come to the conclusion of that, you get some insight into that truth. Maybe the 6 sufferings, the 8 sufferings, 3 sufferings, and you hold that single-pointedly without other thoughts coming in, leaving an imprint in the mind like your hand, not just brushing the surface of the sand or the cement, but pushing down so it leaves an imprint in your mind that will act as a, wow, incredible resource. Like I told you, Milarepa, when he broke his one bowl that he was going down to make his nettle soup, and it broke, instead of being depressed because of his familiarity with the teachings, he saw that as a teaching, as an exemplification of the Buddhist teachings. So that's a goal that we can all try to have, to try to see examples of the teachings, because of, in our meditation, we've become familiar with the teachings and so forth.
And since you were mentioning about the Lam Rim, the next Discovering Buddhism, which starts in July, is actually, the module is called Presenting the Path, which is essentially an overview of the entire Lam Rim. So you get kind of a overview of all the way from Guru devotion all the way to the end, you know, of wisdom. I mean, the 6 perfections. So yeah, so anyway. And yeah. Elaine Jackson is teaching it. And Elaine is also, she's actually, anyway, that's okay. Yeah. She's an amazing teacher. That's all I'll say at the moment.
Elaine Jackson, old friend of mine. She was the director of Land of, what was it, not Land of Medicine? Vajrapani.
And one of the founders as well.
Yes, one of the founders. Her husband became a monk eventually. She has a new partner now, but she was, old friend. So that would be excellent. So those of you who like, it's very good. You might think, well, I heard the Lan Rim before. I don't need to hear that. In the Buddhist tradition, especially the Tibetan tradition, there are lamas who have said they've heard an entire detailed exposition of the Lan Rim 30 times or 50 times. And you might think, well, you heard it once. What do you need to, you just say, oh, I know the 8 freedoms, you need to hear them in a meditative state. Every time you hear the teachings, it's like taking a layer off an onion, because certain misconceptions, you've heard the teachings before, certain misconceptions were eliminated. Now you're hearing it with a new mind that is a little clearer. You're hearing it from maybe a different teacher, different examples. Your mind is different, and you can go deeper. You can take off another layer, getting down to the core understanding of things. So I would recommend highly, if you like these Sunday classes, to listen to those Discovering Buddhism, or if you've gotten to the point where you've become familiar and you want, what do you say? What was it famous in America here then? I think it was Walter Mondale, when he was running for president, said, "Where's the beef?" What was that? You remember that political thing? if you really want the beef, if you really want the meat or the vegetarian, you really want the tofu or the real essence, listen to those detailed teachings again and again. So let's end here with a little dedication. Relax yourself, relax your body, your mind. See if you can recall that clear light nature of your mind for a few moments to clear away other thoughts from your mind. And recognize that we have created some virtuous karma this morning by listening to the teachings with a positive motivation, perhaps having some insights and aspirations during the class. Think in whatever way they ripen, may they become the substantial cause of my continued spiritual realizations up to and including enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Venerable.
So good to